Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. This is, I guess, a special anniversary show. This is the 200th episode, which means I've been doing this podcast a little bit more than 4 years now. But, actually, I'm not right about that. I began this podcast on the week of my birthday 4 years ago. And when I release the podcast tomorrow, I always record it Sunday afternoon, evening, and it officially was released on Monday morning. Tomorrow is my 47th birthday, so it will be exactly 4 years since I started this podcast. And I could not have imagined what a journey it would be. I remember when I did the first show. I was probably about a half hour, 40 minutes, and just kind of filled you in a little bit on my background, how I got into herbalism, and my ideas for the show. And I told my mother I was doing a podcast. She said, "Oh, well, send it to me. I'd like to hear it." And I did, and she said, "You're going to have to make these 5 minutes apiece, or you're going to run out of things to say." Little did she know just how strong the Irish would be in my blood, right? In Shakespeare's King John, he says, "Who is this cracker who deafs our ears with superfluous breath?" Well, I am that cracker. Yes, I am. I don't mind saying that. It's become sort of like a racial slur in recent decades to mean white people from the South, and I am a white person from the South, so it, doesn't bother me anyway, but it actually comes from the Irish word crack. Spelled like craic, C-R-A-I-C, and it means basically just to enjoy yourself or have fun. And so when Shakespeare was referring to a cracker, he probably meant an Irishman who was telling jokes and singing and telling stories and laughing and doing as we Irish tend to do. So I that is a label I wear proudly. But here we are. 4 years later, with 200 episodes, most of them around an hour long, and we're nowhere near, at least I'm nowhere near, out of things to talk about. In fact, we're going to get into some really good herbs today. We're actually going to cover several plants because there's short entries from both my spring foraging cookbook and the Weeds and Grasses, Medicinal Weeds and Grasses book. But I guess because it is an anniversary episode, I should say I do feel that things are about to evolve kind of into the next step. I'm turning 47 tomorrow, and a lot has changed. A lot's changed since I started this show during COVID. I've written a lot of books. I feel like I'm getting kind of caught up on the writing. I'll have 2 more books probably published by January. And there's a list. I'm going to keep writing. There's going to be plenty of more writing done. I actually have a list of like 40 more books that I want to write before I die. Um, but I'm getting a little caught up now. So by next spring, next summer, I do want to do more hands-on teaching. I want to have more events. I want to really settle back into my home in the mountains of North Carolina and set up regular areas where I can take people out on plant walks and um, just make it very convenient and easy for people to come up and spend a weekend or a week learning about herbal medicine or about foraging or various other things I may do. I've got a one of the books I'm going to start working on next year, and it's going to have some companion videos with it. Is going to be on how to play the mandolin. I play several instruments. That's me playing the guitar at the beginning and the end of the show, and played mandolin for a good 30 years now. And I've been really dissatisfied with the way mandolin is taught. Not every teacher does it this way, but mandolin is like keyholed into like it's an instrument for this genre of music. Well, truth is you can play any genre of music on any instrument. But also, instead of learning music theory applied to your instrument, there's a lot of emphasis on learning other people's solos. And I think that is fine if you want to have a cover band, if you want to play like somebody else. But if you want to play like yourself, you need to learn actually how to play music and play your instrument. So that's going to be a whole series I do. There are a lot of things I want to do. I want to do some cooking lessons. I've got my cookbook, The Omnivore's Guide, is very popular. At least once or twice a year, I'd like to have things set up so that I can actually teach people the techniques I explain in that book. And I do want to start doing some videos for that. That's something I promised to do a year ago, and I haven't been able to get to yet. But we're going to have a whole series of that. Most of my stuff's going to be on Rumble. I'll mirror it as much as I can on YouTube, but YouTube doesn't like me very much. So I do feel like we're moving into the next phase of the Southern Appalachian Herbs podcast. Nothing's going to change here. Every week's show will be just the same. If you sign up for the my newsletter, Judson Carroll Master Herbalist on Substack, you'll still get a free article every week. And I mean, nothing's going to change as far as that. But I think you got to face some realities when you hit 47. I'm probably never going to meet the right lady and get married. That was the main thing I wanted in life and the one thing I've never been able to accomplish. Never going to have kids. But it occurred to me the other day that I have a lot of knowledge that was given to me. I mean, my background, my grandparents and everything I learned, and the Hicks family, and I have a lot of knowledge that was passed down to me that is essentially absent in modern culture. And so I'm going to do the best over the next 30 or 40 years of what I've got left, not to worry about what might have been or didn't happen, but to pass that information on to the next generation so that it's preserved. And I think it's very important. And it may be herbal knowledge, it may be foraging, it may be wood carving or playing music or, the many various skills that I have. And so anyway, that's the plan for the next few decades. I'm going to keep doing this, but I'm also going to try to expand it. And we'll try to do more in person and more hands-on. And, God willing, Donald Trump gets reelected and the gas prices come back down, and maybe I can travel around and do a little speaking and teach some classes away from home. But until and unless that happens, I'm not going to put $200 in a gas tank in hopes that I sell, 50 or 60 bucks worth of books at an event. That's what it comes down to. I'm sorry, I get invited to a lot of events, and if it's sometimes there's a vendor fee. Other times it's just, could you come to this place and speak? And I'm like, I'd love to, but I can't drive 100 miles. I can't drive 200 miles and hope to sell 10 or 20 books just to compensate. and not even make enough to pay for my gas. So, hey, if you need another reason to vote Trump, there you go. If Trump gets elected, maybe I can come to your town. I mean, I get invitations like some of them are within, the general area, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia. A lot of them are like in Canada, sometimes in France or Austria. I can't. I'm sorry. So, as long as gas is $4 or $5 a gallon, it's like, I don't even know, $3.89 or something right now. The cheapest one I know here in North Carolina, granted there may be a cheaper one somewhere like maybe down toward Lincolnton or sometimes Wilkesboro has Moxville. They have some good prices somewhere. But I can tell you in North Carolina there are a lot of places where it's like $4.29, and I just can't do it. But God willing, over the next few years, I can establish a real learning center here in the mountains, and have various trails that we go out on, and I can show you through the seasons how things change, and it's going to be pretty cool. So, and if Trump gets elected, maybe I can do a little travel. Who knows? But anyway, y'all, let's get into the show. The show for this week is, we'll start with the spring foraging guide. That's what I usually do. I'm going to cover, let's do 2 plants here. These are short entries. Really, the first one is my white whale as a forager. I cannot tell you how many foraging books talk about how easy it is to find glasswort, and it grows mainly at the coast. I grew up half my life at the coast. I love to go down to the coast fishing every winter. Well, bring back bushels and bushels of oysters, because that's like literally my favorite food. Oysters and blue crab, like the best thing in the world as far as I'm concerned. And redfish, man, I can eat some red snapper. Oh, I could wipe out the red snapper population. It's got to be that Cajun and Creole blood. I can eat some red snapper. But glasswort is supposedly everywhere, and I have only spotted it once or twice and never in enough quantity to harvest. So I'm going to tell you that most of the foraging books and experts on the internet, supposed experts on the internet, hopefully they've actually tried what they're talking about, say that pickled glasswort is fantastic. It's actually a plant that absorbs salt from the soil, and it has a certain saltiness, as best I understand. As I said, I've only had a taste of it. I can't even say I've ever had enough to know what it tastes like. It just eludes me. It drives me crazy. But anyway, anyway, everybody says glasswort pickles are so good, and maybe for me it's one of those plants that tends to hide in plain sight. I think everybody has one of those. Like for some people, they could go out like in a yard full of dandelions and they don't see a single one. I don't know why. For me, maybe that's what the deal is with glasswort. I have no idea. But our brains seem to need training in certain specific things to sort of make sense of the larger environment. And a lot of times once you learn a plant, like if we were to go out and we were to do a plant walk, and I'd say, look, this is wild mustard, or this is lobelia, and you get to know that plant, next time you go out, you're going to be spotting it everywhere. It's weird how that works, but that is very much a part of both wildcrafting for herbs and foraging. So I'll give you a great example. Clam digging. Now, up north, they usually go out and dig holes in the beach and dig up clams. That's not how it works in the Carolinas and Georgia and all that. We have little salt creeks. They're just like little inlets and bays, or it'll be just like, off of the intercoastal waterway or whatever. And at low tide, you have bare sand. At high tide, it's covered in water. That's where we harvest shellfish. Now, if you go out, you see the oysters, super easy, right? If you look really, really hard, you can learn to spot clams. What they do, they're not down deep. There probably are some down there. But the way we harvest them, at least for personal consumption, is the clam will turn itself sideways in the sand. And the little tip of its shell on the side, or lip of the shell, sits right at about ground level, just a little bit above it, so it can get a little air at low tide. you're walking along and you're looking for something about the size of the little black dot or stripe on a black-eyed pea. That's all you're going to see. Okay, so here you are slogging through the mud at low tide, and I mean there are oysters everywhere, and there are mussels everywhere. And some people say you shouldn't harvest Carolina mussels. I disagree, but whatever. There are boats passing, and there's eagles flying overhead, and there's alligators and deer, and I mean your eyes are just catching sight of everything. Fish jumping in the water, and crabs skating around, or maybe even pinching your toe if you're wading barefoot. And so you're looking for this like black-eyed pea sitting in the sand, and you see one and you grab it, it's a dead clam. Okay, well, but at least you've learned, right? You've learned to see what that clam looks like. And you go on and oh, wow, there's a clam. You got one, and it's too small and you have to put it back. They got to be like, what is it, 3 inches across? I can't remember right in a second. To harvest in North Carolina, another one of our absolutely ridiculous regulations. We don't get like cherry stone clams. We have to get the big ones, like they would call quahogs up north. Nobody knows why. We have stupid people in office. But anyway, you're walking along, okay, and you got a keeper. Oh, wow. All right, I got a clam I can keep. This is like a prize thing, right? So if you're like me, you just go ahead and shuck it and slurp it down raw, But so you get it and you put it in your bucket or in your burlap sack or whatever you're carrying. And you go along and you go along and you see another one. Oh, wow, I've got 2 clams. I remember the first time I went out and spent 2 hours at low tide clamming, I came back with 3 clams. Next time I went out, I came back with about 2 dozen. Your eye just starts to recognize it. You subconsciously will start to see them. You can be looking down the beach, you can be watching the seagulls or something, and somehow the corner of your eye, you suddenly see that little tiny stripe on a black-eyed pea sticking up out of the sand. It's amazing what the human mind can do, but it has to be trained to do it. And that's actually a really essential part of foraging. The more you forage, the more you will find what you're looking for. I promise you that. So anyway, I have not really had a chance to pickle glasswort. I haven't had any chance. But there are plenty of resources online, and I gave you my recipe a few weeks ago for pickled cattail shoots, and you do it the same way. So just refer back to that show. And now I'll move on to one that's a little more common. Barely. But this is one I have in the mountains, and you can find it in many places. And it resembles a dandelion. It's called goat's beard. You would be, if you get used to seeing the 2 different plants, you will not mistake goat's beard for dandelion. But you definitely will not mistake the root of goat's beard for dandelion. If you pull the plant up, you'll know this is not a dandelion. In fact, it's a relative of salsify, or that's the way I pronounce it. I've heard people say salsify. It's salsify, as far as I'm concerned, Salsify. And it's really interesting. This whole family is. Salsify, goat's beard, and there's one more, what is it, Changeria or something. It's much like a wild carrot, a little tougher, more like a parsnip, actually, and with an odd combination of flavors. Just like salsify, which you might grow in the garden, or that Changeria or something. It's like a black salsify. I think it comes from South America. It's also known as oyster plant. How weird is that, right? Well, it has a combination of flavor of turnip, parsnip, and yes, actually oysters. I cannot explain this, but you may remember when I mentioned that there was a Japanese lady I met one time that recommended taking radish greens and cooking them. And the first time I did, they taste just like oysters with a little olive oil and salt. It was blew my mind. It was like a mix of turnip greens and oysters, or maybe mustard greens and oysters. And I loved it, and I've cooked radish greens ever since. Well, the root of these 3 very closely related vegetables tastes a lot like oysters and radishes and parsnips and turnips. And so I absolutely love them. I mean, I'm telling you, they're strange, but really very taste if you like oysters. Now, of course, if you don't like the taste of oyster or parsnip or turnip, you're not going to like it. But those happen to be some those are in my top 10 flavors, without a doubt. So I won't hesitate to gather goat's beard to include in a stew. Now, goat's beard of this family is the more tough. So your salsified tends to be a little more tender. You're going to have to trim this one up. Take your, if you have like an oxo vegetable peeler to work real well, I usually use a pocket knife actually and remove the tough outer areas. And but so they're not one you would want to really eat raw. Okay, roasted, boiled, peeled, pureed, cooked down. That's the way you want to go with this because it's going to need some maceration, as they say, just to make them tender enough to eat. And they're really good. Young tender leaves can be added to a salad or tossed in with other pot herbs. They're just like anything. It's in the same family as horseradish even. So, a really interesting vegetable. I like to combine goat's beard greens with radish greens, and I get that oyster flavor that is really nice. But absolutely fantastic, cooked in pork fat, bacon usually for me, and dressed with a little hot pepper vinegar. I think the foraging community as a whole, like anybody who's had interaction with this plant, experience with this plant, would agree that it's an excellent addition to soups. Right up there with nettles and sorrel. Like I said, a bit tough, but similar to salsify. So you're going to really want to cook it down. And this is one I would cook, take out, maybe run through a food meal or mash and put back in. I would definitely combine salsify with nettles and sorrel and anything like that. Really good use of the herb, this plant, is to add it to pot roast. Just the entire plant. You can use the tops and the root. Just chop them roughly. Greens and shoots will cook down and tender, and the root will eventually soften in the gravy. And it gives it something like a parsnip taste and texture with a little bit of oyster flavor, which goes so good with beef and brown gravy. I mean, oh man. One of these days I need to give you Martha Washington's roast beef recipe. She would take beef and cut big, jab holes in it with a knife and put a piece of bacon and an oyster in each hole and a little bit of onion and roast it. It's one of the best things you ever can imagine, with a nice thick brown gravy from those drippings with some mushrooms and onions. And this is definitely something I would include in something like that. But it takes a long time to really cook them truly soft. So I do think crushing them, mashing them, using a food meal, whatever. But if you simmered them in gravy for a while, and say you had carrots and celery in there, it's not gonna get soft as quickly, and so you can get a real soft carrot and then a little bit of chew to a piece of goat's beard or salsify, and you get a nice contrast of textures. So really good stuff, really very good stuff. Now we'll get on to the medicinal plants for the week, and I think we're going to knock out 3 here because they are short entries. The first one, not one I have a lot of experience with. I wouldn't, I can only tell you what I've read about this one. It's Scleranthus annuus, known as annual gnawwell or German knotweed. I've never found it, but anyway. And the only information I can find on this plant is it's used in Bach flower remedies for indecision, hesitancy, and unbalance. I'm sorry. Bach remedies are interesting. They're sort of in the homeopathic type field. I guess it must have some influence over, probably hormones or brain chemistry. I don't know. You just have to look into it. But anyway, now we'll move on to one I am rather familiar with, but I also don't know much about its medicinal use. It's crown vetch. Now, vetches, generally speaking, are toxic. Okay, this is specifically Securigera varia, if I remember correctly. Securigera or Gera vulgaria. Generally speaking, even this one is of such toxicity, it is little used in herbal medicine. But a lot of the old herbal books, going back 100, 200 years, do detail its use. Given that there may be, because it's a toxic plant, okay, and because when you're looking at an old book, you never know if 100% sure if this specific variety of vetch is the one that was growing in their area at the time, because the vetches are leguminous plants, and they're like 50,000 different types of edible legumes, and they're like 6 times more in the same family that are poisonous. So we got to be a little careful with legumes. I'm a legume fanatic when it comes to beans and peas and peanuts and all that, but vetches can be usually toxic. And so the only modern reference I could find on it was Plants for a Future. Said under medicinal use of crown vetch, the whole plant, used either fresh or dried, is cardiotonic, meaning good for the heart. It should be used with extreme caution. And see notes about toxicity. We'll get that in a second. A decoction of the bark has been used as an emetic, meaning makes you throw up. The crushed plant has been rubbed on rheumatic joints and cramps. Known hazards of the whole plant contains a toxic glycoside called coronilin, Coronilin. It is one of the most toxic plants that grows in Britain, so not to be played with. Generally speaking, I keep saying that, we grow a lot of vetches in America as cover crops. They're leguminous plants. They fix nitrogen from the air into the soil. Some are okay. Some are okay for animals to graze on. Most should really be avoided for human consumption. But I just wanted to give you that information. And now we'll get to one that I know far better. And it is Senecio, called so many words. Common names: birdseed, chickenweed, common butterwort, common groundsel, grimsel, grinsel, groundsel, grunsel, grundy swallow, old man of the spring, and ragwort and simpson. I guess my favorite name for that is going to be Old Man in the Spring. Let's go with that. But no, Senecio vulgaris. And although it's no longer used in herbal medicine, also has some toxicity to it. This herb is very useful when used properly and continues to find a lot of use among European herbalists. The ancient Greek herbals would tend to lump Senecio in with the rigerin, Canada fleabane, such as that. And that's not helpful at all because, like I said, this plant does have some toxicity, and if you confuse your Senecio or groundsel for your fleabane, you could really do yourself some harm. So we're going to start this time with Miss Greaves' A Modern Herbal, published, I guess, around 1931. She said it's a very common weed throughout Europe, Russia, and Asia, not extending into the tropics. Very common here in North America now as well. It is abundant in Britain, being found up to the height of 1,600 feet elevation. It grows almost everywhere. It is found frequently on the tops of walls and all kinds of rubbish and waste grounds, but especially in gardens. Yes, it's can be a fairly common garden weed, depending on where you live. And in fact, she says groundsel, as she calls it, which is how I know the plant is groundsel. There's another plant called groundsel as well, by the way. So we got to be a little careful, and that's why I always give you the Latin when I can. She said groundsel is so well known as a troublesome weed. It is connected in the minds of us with caged birds, however, because as most people are aware, it is the favorite food of the canary. I didn't know that, but hey, we'll go with that. She says that groundsel is Old English and actually a very ancient word. There's a Grundy swallow, and there's some towns named after it. The Senecio comes from Latin. We don't really need to get into all that, so I'm going to skip on down here to medicinal uses. Parts used medicinally. The whole herb, collected in May when the leaves are in the best condition and dried. Fresh plant also used for the expression of juice. Chemically, it contains senescin and seneosine, Juice is lightly acrid, but emollient means softening. So, medicinal axes and uses. Specifically, diaphoretic, helps with fevers. Antiscorbutic means it has some vitamin C. It can help against scurvy. Purgative, mainly in this case, we're talking purgative in means of it's going to clean you out, and probably diarrhea. If it was puking, it would say emetic, so purgative. While that word can go either way, this is one that's going to be a strong laxative, just put it that way. Diuretic removes excess fluids, and anthelmintic means it helps with intestinal parasites. It was formerly much used for poultices and reckoned good for sicknesses of the stomach. A weak infusion of the plants is sometimes now given as a simple and easy purgative, a strong infusion as an emetic, so it can be emetic as well. It causes no irritation or pain, removes bilious trouble, and is a great cooler. It means it can actually help lower the body temperature. That's usually by inducing sweating. And as Culpeper puts it, the herb is Venus's mistress. You never know with Culpeper. 1600s, he was an odd character. A very anti-Catholic English Protestant who was very into astrology and accused everyone else of superstition and witchcraft. So anyway, and he himself was accused of witchcraft and almost hanged for it, and then died in the English Civil War. So really interesting character, but you always have to kind of take him with a grain of salt in that regard. But he said, it is as gallant and universal a medicine for all diseases coming from heat. And as gallant as Venus is what he's saying, in what part of the body soever they may be, as the sun shines upon it. So he gave a lot of praise to this herb that we don't use so much anymore, but he thought it was a cooling herb. And he said that it could cause vomiting if the stomach be afflicted, and purging. And but with that, gentleness can be expected, so it wasn't an uncomfortable laxative. It is moist and somewhat cold withal, thereby causing expulsions and repressing the heat caused by the motion of internal parts. In other words, it probably kind of helped with fevers and probably some inflammation. I'm not going to go on with his rhapsody over this herb of Venus, but you got to love his book. I mean, it's classic of the era. Decoction of the herb, he said, just still quoting him, saith Dioscorides, made with wine and drunk, helpeth the pains of the stomach from bile. The juice thereof taken in drink or decoction in ale gently performeth the same, is good against the jaundice and falling sickness, which was epilepsy, and taken in wine expelleth the gravel from the reins and kidneys, that's kidney stones, urinary stones and such. It helpeth the sciatica, colic, and pains of the belly. People in Lincolnshire apparently used it against pains and swellings. Combined with frankincense and powder used in wounds of the body, nerves, and sinews to help heal them, and distilled water from the herb, performeth well the aforesaid cures, but especially for inflammation or watering of the eyes by reasons of rheum into them. Rheum was essentially mucus. Gerard, and he was about 100 years before Culpeper, said that the down of the flower mixed with vinegar proves a good dressing for wounds, and recommended the juice boiled in ale for the purchase of a purge with a little honey and vinegar added. He also said that it helpeth the king's evil, and the leaves stamped and strained into milk and drunk helpeth the red gums and frets in children. That makes sense. All right, so the king's evil, I believe it's called erysipelas now. It's glandular swelling in the throat caused the king's evil, because one of the kings, who was my ancestor, whose name escapes me right this minute, of the House of Wessex, was given a miraculous ability, being a saint now, by the way, he's a saint. He could basically touch someone's throat and cure them from this horrible glandular infection. It became known as the king's evil because it was the evil or sickness that the king could cure. Okay. Many herbal remedies work for that as well. But the red gums and frets for the children would have been lack of vitamin C. That would have been scurvy. She says another old herbalist tells us that the fresh roots, when smelled and taken out of the ground, immediately cure many forms of headache. Okay, ancient aromatherapy. Does it work? I don't know. Let's see what if I can get into a little more modern. Well, let's see. Oh, she said, first of all, she said very popular is a vermifuge or cure for intestinal parasites of worms in children. Brother Aloysius in the German folk medicine tradition said specifically of Senecio vulgaris or Groundsel, that's more the German name for it, used for epilepsy, worms, liver blockage, gravel stones, suppressed menstruation, jaundice, and scurvy. It is depurative, also useful for stomach ache, pains in the loins, burning, and swelling of the anus or genitals. That's a cooling property again, so it all starts to make sense when you see things in context. Thomsonians, as I've explained before, were really the second school of herbal medicine in America, mainly Seventh-day Adventists up in New England. The Thomsonian, this is around late 1800s, early 1900s, Thomsonian Materia Medica states, and this is directly from Dr. Thompson also, this is known in the country by the name of frostweed or meadow scabious, and he describes it. The roots, roots are used for medicine, has a fragrant taste and smells like lovage, and that it does. Lovage smells a little like celery, or angelica, so there you go. Take the green roots and leaves, bruise them, pour on hot water, give this tea sweetened, and it's the best article he knows of for canker, so canker sores. It may be kept by adding a little spirit, a little brandy or whiskey, and is good for rheumatism and nervous infections. It is proved harmless and may be used freely, and makes a very good bitters tincture with hot water and spirit, good for dizziness and cold hands and feet. Interesting. Cold hands and feet, not feets. I'm not going to go feets, don't feel me now. American Eclectic Materia Medica, which predated the Thomsonians, Center of Therapeutic Action. Senecio is a minagogue, meaning brings on menses, diaphoretic, diuretic, expectorant, alterative, and tonic. I think we know all those words. Alterative and tonic are very similar. Tonic means more good for digestion, where alterative means just brings one gradually back into health. Says it appears to exert a specific influence on uterine organs and may with propriety be termed a uterine tonic. It is for this purpose that it is much used for the last few years and for which it has gained such repute. By many it is considered superior to any other article now in common use in amenorrhea, dysmenorrhea, menorrhagia, and many diseases depending upon the uterine derangements. 1860s, we're looking at Southern Fields and Forests. They just said it is said by, they're citing the U.S. dispensatory at the time, to be a favorite vulnerary herb of the Indians. It means wound healing, uses poultice. But in this case, the juice of the plant in honey or the seeds in honey are employed. So that's interesting. 1898, King's Medical Dispensatory, a pharmacy manual says, Senecio is diuretic, pectoral, it's good for the chest, usually lung congestion and such, diaphoretic and tonic, and exerts a peculiar influence upon the reproductive organs, particularly of the female, which has given it, specifically the Senecio gracilis, the name of female regulator. Well, that's interesting. This is one of our valuable remedies in the treatment of female diseases. It relieves irritation and strengthens functional activity. Ovarian and uterine atony. What is atony? Not toned. There's a word I'm looking for. It's like right on the tip of my tongue. Ugh. All right, look it up. Google it. There's a word that is so specific to describe atony, and it's like escaping me. Anyway, atony. With impairment of function, increased mucus or mucopurulent secretions, displacement of the womb, and vaginal prolapse are the chief guides to its use. So it's not uncommon these days, especially prolapse. So we might want to start exploring this herb again. It is efficient in promoting the menstrual flow and may be given alone in infusion combined with equal parts of asarum and salvine in amenorrhea not connected with some structural lesion. It will also be found valuable in dysmenorrhea, sterility, and in menorrhagia combined with cinnamon and raspberry leaves. Has been found very serviceable when administered in the intermenstrual period as well as at the time of ovulation. Let's see if we got anything. It goes on and on about different ways it was basically used in this way. But also this mentioned here useful for pulmonary hemorrhage. So good to check bleeding from pulmonary hemorrhage. Good in gravel and urinary infections. Often given in combination with other diuretics. Said to be specific in strangury or difficult suppress urination. We'll just go with that. In pulmonary and hepatic affections, it has proved advantageous, and taken freely, the decoction has effectively cured dysentery. Wow. So it's got some astringent properties, and apparently a lot of female complaints. We'll go with that. Specific indications and uses: atony of the reproductive organs with impairment of function, uterine enlargement, uterine or cervical leukorrhea, difficult tenesmic micturition, a dragging sensation of the testicles. That's odd. I've never even heard of that, but hey, good to know. And perineal weight and fullness. That's weight and fullness. Okay. They talk about various varieties of Senecio, which could be used. And apparently there are quite a few of them. Apparently the Senecio gracilis was the best for various female conditions. All right, so getting up to Jethro Kloss in, the 40s. Medicinal properties: expectant, diaphoretic, febrifuge, emmenagogue, pectoral, and tonic. It has a very powerful influence on the female organs, combined with white pond lily. We've discussed that plant before as well. It is one of the most certain and safe cures for severe cases of leukorrhea and also suppressed menstruation. Good for all urinary diseases and gravel. Useful for rheumatism, sciatica, joint pains, coughs, and colds. Now we're up to modern use. Plants for a Future says Groundsel. Groundsel has a long history of herbal use, and although not an official plant, is still often used by herbalists, more in Europe than America, for some reason. I don't know. The whole herb is anthelmintic, antiscorbutic, diaphoretic, diuretic, emmenagogue, and purgative. I think we covered all those words by now. It is often used as a poultice and said to be useful in treating sickness of the stomach, whilst a weak infusion is used as a simple and easy purgative. The plant can be harvested in May and dried for later use, and the fresh juice can be extracted and used as required. Use with caution. The plant should not be used by pregnant women. See also notes on toxicity. A homeopathic remedy is made for the plant, useful in the treatment of menstrual disorders and nosebleeds. So, seems to be good for bleeding, and it's not mentioned a lot in some of the other herbals. Known hazards: Senecio vulgaris, this one we're talking about. All parts of the plant are poisonous to many mammals, including humans. The toxin affects the liver and has a cumulative effect. Some mammals, such as rabbits, do not seem to be harmed by the plant and often seek it out, and various birds also eat leaves and seeds. So I guess that's why it's fallen out of use in America, but you can have to do your own research on it. Cloverleaf Farm Encyclopedia says it should be used only under professional supervision. Okay, you need to do your research on it, but it is a very useful herb. And they mention that ragwort, another name for the plant, can be toxic to sheep and cattle. And they actually say it's not used much. No, in use today, it's not popular, but has an impressive historical background in herbal medicine, often prescribed to help lower fever by inducing sweating. They talk about ascorides. They talk about many of things. Key actions: astringent, diuretic, stimulant. Root being the most medicinal. And they say, although no longer recommended to be taken internally, the herb is still used as a poultice, ointment, or lotion applied to relieve pain and inflammation, especially that of rheumatism and rheumatoid arthritis and neuralgic conditions of sciatica. Now, that is, yes, a very good use for it. I will just finish here, and this is interesting. The physician's desk reference for herbal medicine states of Senecio vulgaris, and remember, this is the book your doctor's going to go get off his shelf if you tell him you're taking herbs. He's going to look to see what they do and what they might interact with. It says the toxic principles of the drug are pyrrolizidine alkaloids, which are hepatotoxic and carcinogenic. Use of groundsel for worm infestation can be explained by the toxicity of the drug. I'm going to say, in other words, although it has a fascinating history of medicinal use as an internally used herb, and in certain circumstances may still be appropriate, you're going to have to do your own research. I'm going to recommend you don't use it internally, but externally. Very useful herb, and definitely one you want to learn. Okay, so you don't confuse it with origeron and such. Y'all, I'm going to wrap it up there. Have a great week. I hope you enjoyed the 200th show. Kind of amazing that we've gone this long, but God willing and the creek don't rise, as Hank Williams used to say. He'd say, the good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, I'll see you next week. Well, God willing, we'll have another 200 shows over the next 4 years. And, don't forget to share it with friends, family, and loved ones. And this is probably the largest body of herbal information available for free ever on the internet or ever presented in the history of mankind. If you went literally through the last 200 shows, we've covered more plants in more detail than any resource I know of. We got so many more plants to go. If we're halfway, we're not. There's so many plants with so many uses, and every day I learn more about new plants to me. So it's going to be, a continuing sharing of knowledge for the foreseeable future. So I do hope y'all enjoy it. Please buy my books. Please recommend my podcast and my books to your friends and family. That's what supports this. Like I said, I don't make a lot off of a book, but when I sell a bunch of books, it pays the bills. So it's always good when that happens. Anyway, y'all, have a good one. Happy 200th anniversary, and I will talk with you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, for your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.